Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Annalisa and today I am doing a wrap-up of what I read for A-Spec April. In case you're not aware, A-Spec April, we'll put more details about here and we'll link you to in the description. She has a YouTube channel, but she mostly posts on her blog, which is mainly a book blog. This event and readathon was designed to bring awareness of and promote literature surrounding people on the asexual spectrum and on the aromantic spectrum, which I will link information about below. But the basics are that someone who is aromantic does not experience romantic attraction, which will be defined in the links below, and someone who is asexual does not experience sexual attraction. And both are referred to as a spectrum because there are different subcategories such as demisexual or gray sexual or lithosexual, and different varieties of aromanticism as well, which basically indicate that the person sometimes feels sexual attraction for some reason or another, or will sometimes feel romantic attraction under certain circumstances. So the first week was focusing on reading books with asexual main characters, and the second week was focusing on reading books with aromantic characters, which I actually did accidentally. I read one book each week. These two specifically. This one first and then this one. I've been wanting to read Let's Talk About Love ever since it came out because it was the first time I actually heard buzz about a mainstream published book that had a main character who was asexual, and that the book actually focused on that a lot. So it was a pretty big deal for asexual representation. Since getting into this readathon, I have discovered that there have been a number of other books published with asexual main characters, but I didn't know about that before this. So this readathon definitely succeeded in bringing some awareness to those books for me. One thing I like about both of these is that I'm very fond of the asexual flag, and these both have the colors going on with the purple, gray, white, black, and then the purple and black on this one, so I really like that. And I didn't really know what I was getting into with these books. What this sounded like was a romance, women's fiction, contemporary, or at least modern, very much something that was about being asexual. Whereas this one, I really didn't know, but turned out to be more of an adventure story where the main character happened to be asexual, aromantic, but it is highlighted in the story definitely. So let's talk about love. Usually I prefer my romances back at least 20 years, or in Ireland. They don't have to be old if they're in Ireland. So if it wasn't about ace representation, I would not have read this book. And so it turned out that pretty much the only thing I liked about this book was the ace representation. It does have very good representation, but it's just very basic, and I really like things to be more involved. I've been learning stuff about being asexual for a long time now, and this is more like brand new, introducing you. So I think if you're someone who doesn't know very much about asexuals and would like to learn about it via a work of fiction, this would be a really great way. The main character doesn't have very much personality. The hero that she has the main romance with is pretty boring, and their relationship, the only interesting thing about it is that she's ace and how that comes into it. It's not bad, it's just not good. One of the big things I do appreciate is that Alice here is an asexual, but she is not aromantic, which the two go together a lot, but they also sometimes don't, and sometimes it's hard to explain that to people. So this is a good example of that. Whereas in this other book, we have someone who's both asexual and aromantic.
My computer eats all my footage and now I have to re-record. Yes, that's what happened.
So I don't have the book to waft around anymore because I returned it to the library. This is Arwen, by the way. The Lady's Guide to Petticoats and Piracy. I really liked it. It was very much an adventure story where the sexual and romantic orientations of the character were just a thing that was going on. It wasn't the main point of the book. I believe it's set in about Jane Austen era England, and the main premise of the book is that the main character, Felicity, wants to be a physician but can't because she's a woman in that time. It starts off with her working for a man who has fallen in love with her and wants to marry her, and our first encounter with her aromanticism and asexuality is that she doesn't return those feelings even though she likes him as a person, and everything seems to be there except the romantic and sexual attraction. Although, quite frankly, also he's turns out to be kind of a jerk and wants to kind of squish her dreams and doesn't support her as much as he seems to have. You find out in the first chapter, I think, she runs away from him back down to London because she's been up in Scotland area and tries once more to get admitted to a medical school, is refused again, and is then pointed towards a physician who might be willing to take on a female apprentice, and it is her going to try to get this person to accept her as an apprentice that leads into all her adventures for the rest of the book. The writing is somewhat more towards younger YA / middle grade-ish sort of levels, in that there are some plot holes. The characters aren't quite as developed as I would like, although they are fairly well developed, a lot better than in Let's Talk About Love, for example. They were well-rounded and interesting, and I like them. It's just they're just a little bit more immature than I've become used to in more recent YA that has been more aimed towards adults and young adults. But I really liked it here, especially because the thing I find most irritating about YA is the obsession with sex and romance, and obviously with this asexual, aromantic character, we didn't have that. But the part that I liked best about this book, besides the fun adventure, was definitely how the asexuality and aromanticism, I believe is the noun, was portrayed as just a part of who she is and not the entirety of who she is. I don't really like when a person is reduced to their sexuality. I also really like that it brought up the difficulties that can be caused between, the friction that can be caused between women who fit into gender roles and women who don't fit into gender roles. And I'm going to be doing a discussion video separately on that and on some of the other thoughts that this book gave me. So you'll be seeing that in a little while. I'll let you know there's also female Muslim representation in this book, and I like that part of it. But it was very enjoyable, and it's going to the top of my to buy list, as opposed to usually new books I find I want to buy go on the bottom, and it's a very long list. So in general, I highly recommend The Lady's Guide to Petticoats and Piracy by Mackenzie Lee. So that is how my A-Spec April went. I've decided to separate out my more extensive thoughts on The Lady's Guide into another video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be seeing you in the next video. Bye!